Hello, Namaste, Salam, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, Kencho. Welcome to an episode by Savin Conversations, where we endeavor to bring conversations that are useful and inspiring. Today on our episode, we have Stuti Changle, a celebrated author of two books, also a speaker at multiple events, a reality TV show host, and on a mission to change life. Welcome to the show, Stuti. How are you?
Thank you, Sanyam. That was a very lovely introduction. I am doing well today. It's a winter afternoon in Delhi, so, a little cold and snuggish, but yeah,
Right.
it's all good.
Right. And I think looking at your setup, if it were not to be COVID times, I would have assumed that you were in a coffee shop.
Yes, I would have been. I
And
think COVID has kept me away from cafes for a very long time now.
right. And that is where I would want to start this conversation. So if it were not to be, not to have these challenges of not being able to meet in person, I would have particularly wanted this conversation in a coffee house. And I want to know from you, why is Starbucks so special for you?
Wow, so you've done your homework well. Starbucks is very special to me because now I'll be very candid and honest here. It's one of those coffee shops where you pay 150, 160 bucks for the cheapest cappuccino that they offer. Of course, when you're struggling, you look at the menu, and
Yeah.
Starbucks is relatively, higher price. So you
Mhm.
look at the option which is the cheapest on the menu, and this is that one place where you can sit down for hours, use free Wi-Fi, and sort of work on your book. So that's one of the reasons why Starbucks became my favorite place when I started writing, especially back in 2016 and 17.
Right.
And the whole coffee shop is kind of, nostalgia for me. It's like walking down the memory lane and sort of revisiting my past when I wrote my first book on the open road. I mean, I finished my first book over there in bits and pieces. Even my second book, You Only Live Once, is finished in Starbucks. And that was a time when I was also looking for a sense of belongingness. So when you quit your corporate job and you start doing something new, I think it's very important to have that own circle of yours where you feel comfortable, which becomes family, which becomes something that you want to come back home to. And at that time, when most of my colleagues were busy partying or they had their own lavish corporate life, I was kind of jobless, and I was kind of trying to make this dream of becoming a writer work. And the people that I found there, the ambience, everything, it just became like home to me.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons that no matter where I go, Starbucks will always be a very special place in my life, in my journey. And so to say, it's one of the places where I've kind of completed my books, both of
Right.
them. And because this happened pre-corona, so of course you could go over there and kind of write, which is not
Yeah.
happening right now, but it will always be very, very special.
Right, and I think it's particularly interesting because whenever one thinks of a coffee shop, they think of going there with friends, more so for partying or discussing all the old times. Whereas you were going there to write. How do
Yes.
you think that Starbucks is that place where you are able to write?
Actually, I kind of have been to a lot of places where I've tried writing. I
Mhm.
also scribble a lot of ideas in my diary, especially when I'm traveling, whether I'm in a bus, car, taxi,
Mhm.
train, aeroplane, I don't know, all the modes of transport.
Right.
And I just scribble my ideas. But when it comes to structuring, I want this one place which feels a lot more routinely. It's a lot more routine like. So you go to this place and you unwind from the rest of the world, and you sit down, you focus, and you write.
Right.
So that cannot really happen in an airplane, because you can't be sitting in an airplane like forever. It would be
Right.
1 hour, sometime once or twice a month, or in the car also. It might be daily. It could be
Right.
your daily commute, and maybe the driver is driving, but still it would only be 1 hour. So to
Mhm.
sit down for 5 to 6 hours in a row and sort of focus, concentrate on something, I had to be at a place which is not my home, because at home you want to sleep. Everyone who's working from home right now knows that it is very challenging to work from the place that's your bedroom, or where you're sleeping,
Right.
or your dining area, because your mind wanders. You either want to sleep, or you want to eat something, and
Yeah.
you're all over the place, you know.
Right.
When it's home, you can't be sitting at one place. Come on, home is about enjoying.
Right.
Home is about being comfortable, and here you're trying to make something work out. So actually sitting at a place did not, you know, it does not make sense.
Right.
So at that time, this cafe became the place where I would go, and the reasons I've already stated, that, you know, it had free Wi-Fi, coffee, and anyways, if I would be, you know, working from a co-working place or anywhere else, I would still be paying, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not that I wouldn't be doing that, and that again becomes a little office like. So cafe is this little corner, or it's that little sweet spot which is neither office nor home, and a place where a routine can be built, because, you know, it's not a place that you would be in for only 1 hour once a week types. You can actually go down, sit down there every day for 4 to 5 hours and concentrate and write. So that sweet spot was that cafe. Plus it was close commute for me. At that time I wasn't married, I was a bachelor. I used to live in Gurgaon. So that particular Starbucks in Cyber City where I finished was a very easy 20 rupees commute for me, because I would walk until the metro station and it was just 20 minutes, 20 rupees away. So, and 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
So it just became that sweet little place, and then it kind of became home, and then it became that place where I finished both the books. So I think when I revisit or go back in my journey, that one place has a very special role to play.
Well, definitely. And I think now what we'll want to do is we'll go to your formative years when you were too young to read or write. And as far as we understand, your mother has a creative side to things. She happens to be a dancer. She loves to sketch. How was your relationship with your mother, and how did it impact you growing up as a kid?
I had a very, very healthy and friendly relationship with my mother all through my childhood, while growing up, through the teenage years, and after I became a young adult. And this is because my mother particularly is very creative and open-minded, and I think she was always ahead of her time. So when typically mothers wouldn't want their daughters to be doing so and so, she never complained about me having a different choice or me doing something that I really wanted to. And she loved me so much that she just wanted me to support me, wherever I was or whatever I was doing. Especially during the teenage, I remember that if there was any issue, during the teenage, it's a very, very, I would say, weird time of your lives, because you sort of start realizing a lot more about your mind, body, and soul, which you're not so much aware of or conscious about as a child. And there are so many questions that you find yourself entangled in with, and you don't know the answers. So whether it's a failed relationship, whether it's your first crush, whether it's some ugly experience that you would have had as a teenager, I could always go back home and speak to my mother about it. And she has always been very, very candid and supportive. And she was this mentor-like figure to me for a very long time. Of course, the question that how her creative side has impacted, surely it has. I mean, she's a beautiful dancer. So she made sure that she makes me learn a little bit of it. Right. Obviously, I'm not as good as my mother is. I mean, she is Kathak, MA in Kathak, and she's like a professional Kathak dancer. In fact, she was also awarded by Raj Kapoor in her times, which is a huge, huge thing back in the time. She sketches, and she's open-minded. I think creative people, they come with a different set of values. They're not constricted. They're very, very open-minded, and they want to experiment and try out new things. And I think that side of me has totally come to me from my mother, and I truly feel blessed to have her emotionally, as well as the kind of impact she has had on my personality.
Right. And when we talk about mother, of course, it is often said that a daughter's relationship with her father is very important as well in how she ends up growing. So how did you find your relationship with your father? How was he like for you?
So my relationship with my father is bittersweet. And when I say bittersweet, it's like how it's with media and celebrities. So celebrities want the media because, without them, they won't be a celebrity, whether it's social media or news channels, because they want to be out there, they want to be known. But at the same time, when media covers certain aspects of their life that they don't want to go out, then media becomes a problem for them. So it's like they can't live without it, and they can't also wholly live with it. So it's like bittersweet. You want it and you don't want it. So with my father, he has always been supportive, to be honest. But he is a very restrictive person, I would say, in terms of the thought process that he has. So he's a banker and he's very risk averse. So if he says that don't try this out, you might fail, he actually wants to support you. He actually doesn't want that, his daughter ends up at a place where she's a failure, or he's just too much protective about me as a daughter. So he wants me to go or pursue a career which is a lot more safer, and that's what any dad would want to do for their daughters. But it becomes bittersweet in the sense that if you are very sure that this is one thing that you want to do, and what your father says or wants from you is not possible, like he really wanted me to be a banker, and I knew that this cannot happen because I just don't feel myself fitting into that seat and going back to that particular bank every day 9 to 5. I'm not that person. I'm a lot more adventurous, lot more creative, lot more open-minded. So it just does not resonate with the kind of person I am. So this job might always be a misfit for me. But to kind of convince him about that took a very long while. And I think he's still happy with all the success that I've had, but I know that somewhere in the back of the mind, he would still want me to be in a bank. So that's how relationship with my father is. And apart from the career thing, on a personal level, he's always been very supportive. I think all of my education was sponsored by my dad. So I would say that he's always been supportive, and I'm really blessed to have him.
Right. What is that idea that you had when you wanted to pursue your father in accepting you leaving your job and moving careers?
I knew that he wouldn't agree. I knew that he would develop cold feet because he would be very anxious that why is she doing what she is doing. So I think at that time, being young and someone who wanted to be rebellious, that's how you are in your when you're a young adult, I would say. I just did not tell anything to anyone. I just ran away one fine night. So 3 days in a row, I went to the office and I felt that this is one place I don't want to come back home to, or I don't want to come back to, sorry. And I just decided that I'm going to book a ticket so it was like a train ticket from Mumbai. So I was working in Mumbai to Delhi, and I just want to go. Like, I just don't want to do this. And that's how spontaneous, that's how stupid it was.
Well, we'll definitely get to the spontaneity of it. How was Stuti as a kid in school? Was she very confident of her abilities, or was she reserved in her approach?
I would say I was reserved in my approach. So I was very confident about the things that I knew, which was any talent related thing, be it dancing, be it singing, be it studies. I was very good at academics. Like, I've had a 90 plus kind of a record when you talk about my academics. So all those side, I was always very, very confident or very, very sure of who I was. But when it came to sort of taking risks, when it sort of came to doing or having some adventure or things like that, I think I was always very, very nervous, coy and shy. I was not the person who would speak, go to the stage, be in front of so many people. I would like to be in my shell with some friends that I had. And I think that also came with a lot of body image issues that I had while I was growing up, especially. So I was this nervous kid who had weird haircut. Some of the classmates would call me Ghosla. This one kid who was nerdy in a sense that I had huge glasses, which I still have. And there was a time when I also had braces. I was little hairy. I was dark in complexion. So all the things that, guys might not want in their typical girl date to be. So I was not even the kid who would be approached as a teenager by my classmates.
Right.
For that matter. And all my friends were going out with someone. All my friends were doing things that I was not doing. So that kind of also impacted my confidence at that time. It doesn't matter at all right now. But I know that the first crush that I had in school kind of rejected me because the girlfriend he had was a lot more beautiful than I was. And that was the conventional beautiful, that how you see it, not really what I was. So I think growing up, my journey was a mix of both. While I had confidence in my own abilities, there were certain aspects where I would just close myself down and I would just run away from everything because I knew that this is where I don't fit in, or this is where maybe I don't belong. So there were certain aspects where I would just run away. So if it was an annual function dance where you had to go out with a guy, or while it was freshers in college when you had to ask your seniors out and take them out, I was nowhere there. Like, I was not that person who is in the limelight or who's the coolest kid in class or things like that. I was a little shy, if I would put it out like that.
Well, I think it would be interesting to then know that, a kid who is reserved ultimately ends up hosting a reality TV show, which might typically want those typical level of glamour, let's say, to a person hosting it. And I think we'll try to transition to that journey all the way. But I want to know, while you were in school, apart from all the things that you are doing, would you be considering yourself as a person who would write very good, or you never wrote, or you just wrote but did not even think about it?
I think I always loved writing. I loved languages, especially Hindi and English, even as subjects when they were in the class. Not that I did not like science. I did like all the subjects. I was really, really good at academics. But I think language for me was a medium to express myself. So, while I couldn't express myself out loud while I was speaking or doing something else, for me, writing became a medium where my creative expression could come out. So if I was not feeling good about something, I could write it in a diary. No one would know about it, and it would be beautiful. So I would write weird things like small poems, shairis in Hindi. I also tried writing some Bollywood songs like that. And all those things were an outlet for me. They were like something that I couldn't express to people because I was too much in the fear of being judged by everyone. And the fact that everyone is now going to know about what's going inside of me, I wanted to conceal it. But it found an outlet with writing on a piece of paper, is what I feel. I never read those poems out in front of anyone because I was not confident enough. But I was very happy about penning them down in the first place. And that's where my whole thing was, as a kid or while growing up. The first time I think I read something that I had written in front of a couple of friends was somewhere after college. It was maybe in MBA. And sometimes while we were out partying with my friends, I would suddenly turn into this comedian who wants to bring out all the weird ironies of life. And then I became this person in the group who everybody wants to listen to because this person is just so funny. And sometimes this person is talking about all the stupid things that he has or she has gone through, but you sort of relate with it and you laugh. And at that time, I realized that I'm kind of an entertainer. Like, if the things that I've been writing on a piece of paper, if I also start speaking things out, maybe people want to listen to me. Maybe I am interesting enough. Maybe I'm not that kid who has to be in the shell forever. And that's where I slowly and gradually found myself. I was never very sure about going to the stage and speaking in front of people. But when I saw that kind of a response, when I thought that people found me funny, when I thought that people relate to my content, they enjoyed it thoroughly, that's where the confidence, I think, finally came in. It built in slowly and gradually. And then it culminated into hosting a TV show in 2019 and doing a lot of speaking engagements after my first book released. Also, then it, I think MBA as a degree kind of channeled my energy in the right direction, because until engineering, I wasn't very sure about speaking in general. But after delivering so many boring presentations in MBA and in corporate, I think I was very confident that I can speak in front of people, because every other presentation was a lot more boring than mine. So I knew that I can entertain even in the presentations, because there was this one thing I would say and people would just start laughing. Sometimes people would burst out. And
Okay.
at that time I was like, wow, okay, this is a good presentation, maybe it's going
Right.
well and people are really enjoying it. So
Right.
that's where I think I slowly and gradually found myself. MBA and moving out to Delhi helped me a lot, because now I was in a different social circle, interacting with different set of kids. Some of them were really bright, came from one of the top universities like, DU, IITs and all. And
Yeah.
that's where the cultural exchange also happened. Initially I was a very fearful that coming from a tier 2, maybe I would never fit into this thing. But eventually I think I changed, I evolved as a person. And I'm happy that I did, because I think life is all about evolving and changing. You have to learn new things, adapt, move on.
Right.
You can't be stagnant. If you're stagnant, then you're stale.
Right. So we'll probably want to come to MBA, but just before that, uh, I think it can be related to a reserved mindset. Post doing a BTech and then going for an MBA, which nowadays becomes like a default option. Do your class 12th with science background, go to an engineering college, go for an MBA, and somehow people think that the life will settle down, which I don't think does at any point
Yes.
in time. But even after that, so it would it be right for me to assume that you were still developing that confidence in your writing while you started off with your engineering, and that's why you thought that should I go for an MBA because it would at least give me a safer option, or was it not like that?
It is very funny that I wrote a couple of pages that I wanted to eventually make it a novel. But
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote a couple of pages, which would be 10 to 15 pages, while I was still in the third year of engineering.
Okay.
And that's the first time I was trying to attempt at writing a story. So until now, it's all shairis, lyrics, poems, stuff like that. If you're not feeling well, then it's a diary entry. But this was this one first piece of writing that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did at least 3 or 4 of them. And they were all different stories, but they were
Okay.
inspired from my own life. And I wrote them. And then I showed it to a couple of people, including my brother, a friend of mine. There was this friend of mine who was very close at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I made them all read it. And they're like, it's nice, but you're using too many, hard words. It's like, it's not relatable. What you're writing is something only maybe Shashi Tharoor can relate to. And this is not the kind of writing that maybe will click with everyone. While you're doing well, try and tone down on the words that you're using and make it a lot more relatable, because story is not about the English language or using it to its fullest.
Mm-hmm.
It's about conveying the right emotions, and it's about connecting to the audience. So they said this is missing, but otherwise it's fine. I never wrote about that after that. I was like, okay, maybe I'm not the person who can connect with people, and it sort of broke my confidence, and I stopped writing. I did not write anything. Then when I came to Delhi for MBA, this was the year 2014,
Mm-hmm.
I met Kushal, who is now my husband, but
Mm-hmm.
we were friends for some time. Then we started seeing each other. And then finally the relationship culminated into marriage last year, which was 2019. But I met him after I came to Delhi. So I had once met him before that. And then this was the second time I was meeting him when I was in Delhi. And only after 3 to 4 quick meetings, we became good friends. We were open about what we were doing in our respective lives. He has his own startup, and I was this student who was still pursuing MBA. But I wanted to be a writer somewhere in the back, but wasn't confident about it.
Right.
One fine meeting in a cafe, I made him read those weird chapters that everyone else had disapproved of. And he told me that, wow, you write really well. Now, I still don't know whether it was just to kind of make me happy or it was really that well. But I think he's a very honest person. I've known him from a very long time. So only when he would have seen some potential, he would say that. He's not a kind of guy who would sugarcoat and sort of, just make you feel good.
Yeah.
If he feels about it, he'll speak about it. That's how he
Right.
is. And he's like, wow, this is good. Why don't you write? Why don't you finish this book?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, it's not that interesting, and maybe people are not gonna. Oh, he's like, who cares about the people? You write it because you like to write. You're a writer, and I can so much see it in your writings. You write, you finish this book. Like, okay. Then I never worked on it. And in the final year of MBA, when we were getting placed, a lot of companies were coming on campus for placements. My anxiety again rose. I became a very, very dead anxious person, because I knew that the internship that I had done in the summers would definitely culminate into a job offer, which I wouldn't be able to deny because the package was really high. And again, I know that what I'm doing is for the allure of high package, but I don't want to get into this job. So I kept on praying every day that God, let not that job culminate. Like, let them say that we are not interested. Because if they will say they are interested, it's a beautiful trap and I can never escape it. I would just say yes because of the money involved. And when you're young, all of your classmates are getting plays in the big fours of the world. You want that for yourself, to be honest. I don't want to be this person who lies now and says that I was very sure about my career. I knew I'll be a best-selling author. I did not even know that if I'll be able to sell one book, you know. Now that I've crossed 20,000 plus is like a dream. But at that time, I was like, not even one person is going to relate to it. Not even one person is going to read this book. And at that time, when you have a job offer, and I'm just making the figure or quoting the figure here, not to sort of show off that what job I had, but just to show you that what was the kind of risk involved at that time. And that job was 14 lakhs per annum while you starting the job as a new kid. And it's a huge, huge package to leave. So I kept on praying to God that this should never culminate. And God listened to me. Somehow, 3 of my classmates got the PPO, as how you call it, and I did not receive the PPO. One of the reasons is also that my boss was very happy with my internship and he wanted to offer me one. But he also told me that, Stuti, somewhere I feel that relationship banking is something that you're not interested in. Maybe you want to be in a more creative career, like marketing and advertising. And I told him, yes, exactly. I don't want to be here because I like writing. And even if I'm able to write jingles for advertisements, I think I'll be more happy then sort of selling these bank policies and sort of getting these corporate clients. I think I'm not this person who wants to be a relationship banker. And he was like, okay. So I knew that maybe somewhere my boss also knows and he wouldn't offer me. So finally it culminated for 3 other students and not me. And but kismat ko kuch aur hi manzoor tha, as you say in Hindi. I was placed with another company and that was FMCG. It was in the FMCG segment, and I was offered again a role of sales management trainee over there, and I mean that which eventually makes you an area sales manager. And the package was again high, and I couldn't stop myself, and I said yes. But 3 months into the job, I knew that, Stuti, you need to run away because this is a never-ending trap. ये पैकेज बढ़ता जाएगा धीरे 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 और आपकी जो एबिलिटी है टू टेक द रिस्क विल taper with every passing day. It will never go up. And this is the time you're young, you don't have any responsibility, and this is the time when you can take risks. Maybe 10 years from now, you would be married, you might have a kid, you might have a family to support, you might have loans to pay. This is the time. This is it. If you don't start on the journey of becoming a writer right now, this will never happen. And you will die as one of those people who all through their lives wanted a different life, but never had the courage to pursue it. So be it, leave it. And that's where in 2016, that particular day comes. So now we are going back to our conversation where I said that it took me 3 days, lot of anxiety, and 1 train ticket to figure out that I need to find my true calling. And this is not working for me. This high package corporate life is not working for me.
Right. And I think I want to come to that day, but before that, you come from a tier 2 city. You come from Indore, and and coming to a city which is Delhi would be a diametrically opposite culture that you were entering into. What kind of challenges did you face? Did you feel anxious? Were you at times too tired of just being in Delhi and just wanted to run away from there? Or were you able to gel with people around you?
I think coming to Delhi was a point in my life which was like the point from my life completely shifted. It turned upside down. It completely changed. So you have pointed it out very correctly that I come from Indore and I come from a tier 2 city. Although I come from a family which is quite forward looking and open-minded, so certain things like maybe drinking alcohol and parties and stuff like that wasn't new to me. I had already seen that. But when I talk about a cultural shift, it would be everything. And let us just start from the clothes that we wear. So when I first entered my class, I saw that everybody was so neat, so tidy, so well dressed. And this is something which is very specific to Delhi. It doesn't
Okay.
happen in Mumbai, it doesn't happen in Bangalore, because I've worked in both of these places, or I've been to both of these places before
Right.
MBA. But especially Delhi, all the classmates that you have, 70% of them are localites, and there's a certain way that they speak, there's a certain manner that they have with stuff, there's a certain kind of dressing that they have, there's a certain confidence that they have. I see people in
Right.
the north are extremely confident about everything. They're not one of those coy, shy people. I don't want to label everyone, I'm not doing that right now. All I want to say is that maximum people, because that's how the culture is, they're really
Mhm.
outspoken.
Right.
Especially most of my classmates were Punjabi, so they were again outspoken, they were confident, they were neat, they were well dressed, and there were so many other things. Apart from that, because nobody was there from MP in my class, what happens is that the first groups that you make in class completely is derived from the formula region, I would say, plus language, then plus religion. You know, in India, there are so
Right.
many layers, how people make a decision. But region is the most important factor
Mhm.
that they
Mhm.
consider. So
Right.
all Delhiites would group together. People from Bangalore down south would group together. People from Assam, people from Kolkata, from the east, they would mix well and they would group together.
Mhm.
Gujaratis had their own group in our class, so to say. Hardly there was any Marathi. I come from Maharashtra, like I'm a Marathi, but since I've not stayed for a very long time, I've just stayed 2 years in Bombay, I don't have a Marathi accent, or I don't
Mhm.
know how to speak in Marathi. So some
Right.
Bombay people were also there, some Mumbaikars were also there, but then they had their own group.
Right.
So finally, there was this only one girl in my class who was left, and she was from Bhopal, and she was also struggling with the same thing. And we sort of bonded and made groups together. But again, I would say this is not just one thing. There were so many things. Like, you know, when there were presentations, I would develop cold feet, I would just shiver, I just did not know how to speak in front of these people.
Yeah.
And there were so many things, that were so different, that I really wanted to run away. 2 months into MBA, I again wanted to run away, because the change was so daunting, the change was so challenging, that I did not see any opportunity to, you know, rise above the rest. I knew that I would somewhere be in the last 10 kids of the class, in terms of attention, in terms of grades, in terms of everything. And I had such a negative view of my own life for myself at that time, that
Yeah.
I wanted to run away. But again, I would say, I would like to bring in Kushal into picture here. While Kushal was not in my college, he became this one friend of mine who was not in the college, who was from out of the college. But then, since we bonded well together, we could speak to each other about things that were happening. I told him about everything, and he has really helped me build the kind of confidence that I have today. He told me that no, you're sort of undervaluing yourself. Why would you think like that? You're such a talented person. How many people in your class would be so multi-talented that they could paint, they could sing, they could dance, they're good at academics, you
Mhm.
can talk well. There's so many things that you have, that God has gifted to you, and why not use these God gifts to
Mhm.
sort of rise above the rest, and sort of not feel that you are the last person that anybody would want to listen to. Build on your talent, build on your capabilities. And he was the guy who kind of made me feel that I can do this. He made me stay, I would say, with a lot of confidence, that he was the one who made me stay back. And for him also, I was like this cute little girl who's come from a small town, or maybe a tier 2 city,
Uh-huh.
and who he's helping kind of gel well into the metropolitan culture. And he was also sort of enjoying. He always says that I really like the innocence and transparency that you had. I
Okay.
think very less people would be having that around me, and I've never met a girl like that. And that's the reason I got interested in the first place. So
Mhm.
that whole relationship also has a huge role to play in terms of why I stayed back. And eventually it has all played out for very good things. So they always say that, you know, there's a bigger plan
Mhm.
that God has for you, and you should have faith.
Right. And I think when we talk about Delhi, so Stuti and I happen to come from the same college. I think when we
Yes.
talk about Delhi, one of the most important things that Delhi does to you is that it gives you that confidence that you can take a leap of faith. And you might fail, but it won't be bad enough.
Yes.
you would still be able to bounce back. And I think that is one of the things that is not generally appreciated about Delhi, but would have a lot of bearing on people who are not actually from Delhi. And one should
Yes.
definitely live in Delhi once in their
They
lifetime.
should. They should. They should. I think the culture is very empowering.
Yeah.
I think it makes you a lot more confident. It makes you a lot more social, I would say.
Right.
And it just makes you this one person who wants to try out new things, talk to new people, learn certain stuff, because all the people you see here are mostly very adventurous and they're mostly very outgoing.
Right.
And that sort of builds on your personality as well. So I think everybody should stay in Delhi at least for 2 or 3 years in their life.
Right. And on a side note, on a funny note, Delhi has a lot of places around where you can also visit on your weekends, unlike other cities.
Yes,
But
yes,
yeah,
it does.
so there is this one particular very interesting instance in your book, and so this is the first book that is Stuti has written, On the Open Road,
And this is
and,
the second one.
and that's the second one, You Only
You
Live
only
Once.
live once.
And both of these books have a theme in common, which is they revolve around startups. But my question is not about startups. My question is about that leap of faith. So in the book, there is this conversation between Myra and Kashyap, where Myra is wanting to start up, but is not having that complete faith in herself if she should or she should not. And Kashyap is the person who finally comes in and says, either you do it or you don't. Don't be fixated in between. Do not get squeezed in between. And Myra in the Star Wars dialogue says, I will do it now. Now you have been talking about those 3 days when you said that I will do it now, and then you booked the ticket. Did you have any conversation? And if you did, who was that Kashyap for you? Was it
That's very
yourself?
interesting. No, that was not me. So I think a lot of my characters have derivations from Kushal, especially Kabir and Kashyap. So on some instances, Kushal is a lot like Kabir, except for the fact that he doesn't come from a very rich family. He came from a middle class family, but then he decided to start up. That's a different thing. That part of Kabir is different from Kushal's. But this whole thing that Kushal would become this matured person at times, who's at least 40, 50 plus, and then he's asking you certain questions, and he's taking you through these certain conversations, and you eventually end up realizing a lot of things in those. So वो ज्ञानी आदमी was basically Kushal, and I took a lot of characters or characteristics from Kushal for that character. Also, I have always looked up to the success of Ashish Kashyap, who was the founder of GoIBibo at that time. Now he's founded another company called IndWealth. And he was this one person that I would read about maybe on magazines, blogs, here and there. And there are certain people who sort of, you have never met them, but then they become your celebrity idols or things like that,
Yeah.
You really look up to them, you kind of worship them. So for me, he was this one person. So Kashyap is actually a mix of many entrepreneurs that I've met in this journey, especially when I was writing the book. And it's mostly Kushal and the kind of characteristics of Ashish Kashyap that I could absorb from the internet on my researches and, things like that, on my research and my searches, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that's how Kashyap came into picture. And that's how he's become one of the characters that people love a lot, because he's this more sorted man, more matured man than the rest. He's seen it all. And now he's helping the young kiddos to sort of get that courage and get on the path.
Right. And my question would be, why did you choose Delhi to come? Like, you could have gone anywhere. You could have gone to the Himalayas for any reason. But why was Delhi that place that, okay, I'm leaving Mumbai, but I'm going to Delhi? Why would you do that?
Because Mumbai is a very expensive place. It's not that I did not have support in Mumbai. There were a lot of college friends from my earlier college, which is engineering, who were placed with TCS, and they lived in and around Mumbai. And I would have easily found that circle there. But Mumbai in itself is a very expensive place to be in, especially if you're not employed. And also if you have certain benchmark for yourself. So when I was in Delhi, I was so well off that I was actually living in Powai. But I knew that now I couldn't be living in Powai because my package, my salary is gone.
Right.
And at that time, I just did not want to sort of go into a locality where I just feel that my ego is getting hurt, and I'm just feeling that maybe I'm going downward, I'm spiraling downward.
Yeah.
I'm not going upward in life. So that validation, which I would not get from the society at that time, bothered me. It doesn't bother me anymore, but it did at that time.
Yeah.
And that was the reason I came back to Delhi, and not Delhi, in specific Gurgaon, because two of my really close friends from college, MBA, were placed and they were working in Gurgaon. And one of them luckily had one room empty in her apartment. And that room costed me only 6,500. No. I know 6,500 is a huge figure. It's not that less. But if you compare it to my lifestyle or my rent or my things in Mumbai, in Powai, it was a lot less than that. And my overall kharcha was less than 12K. So even if I could take one assignment worth 25,000 in freelancing, I knew that 12,000 I'll give, 12,000 I will save, 12 and a half basically. So that was the kind of thing I had in mind for myself at that time, because I knew that until I finish my book, there's no secondary source of income. I will have to freelance, I will have to make money. But at that time, life becomes a lot more easier if you are at a place which is overall cheap. So making 25K in Mumbai is nothing. You would live a very, very weird life full of hardships, traveling in local trains, things like that. And I wanted to be free at that time because I knew that this 12K that I'll be saving will help me travel.
Yeah.
So I used to curate really budget trips. Like I went on this trip to Udaipur, which costed me overall only 6,000. And you can't do this living in Mumbai because you won't be saving even 6,000 from 25,000.
Right.
So for me, it was a whole financial plan that I had made myself, given my priorities in place. Plus, Mumbai is a very, very crowded city. Mumbai is a lovely city. Let me be clear that it's not that I don't like Mumbai. I love Mumbai. But I do feel that to be in Mumbai, there's a certain source of income or certain level of income that you should be having to live a decent enough comfortable life. I'm not saying that you live the most luxurious life, but then the minimum things in life, you know, and that's a little priced, highly priced, especially your rent is so high that you are not able to save for anything else.
Right.
So at that time, Gurgaon became that one place for me. Also, there was another reason. Kushal was in Delhi at that time. So Gurgaon and Delhi share close proximity, and not a lot of people knew that I'm taking the risk of quitting my job. My relatives, my family, people around me still believe that I had that job in Mumbai and I'm living there. So I had nobody to actually call up and cry if things don't work out.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be at a place where I have this circle. So this friend of mine with whom I shared the flat, her name is Mohi. Mohi and Kushal were two reasons why I came back, because I knew that these are the two people that I can fall back on if things don't work well. And I knew that these two guys are earning also good enough. So if there's ever that moment, I'm lucky that it never came. But if ever there's this moment where I need something, I need to borrow, or maybe I don't know where I am, they will be there. I wouldn't be on the streets. Yeah. So my friends were that thing for me. 6 months later, I informed my dad. So he knew that, you know, this is the thing and she has left her job and stuff like that. So there also came a point when I needed money, because all my freelance money had been, sort of, it just went away in all the expenses that I had, and I had nothing for the next month. So it has once also happened with me, and my dad supported at that time. So that's the reason I always say that irrespective of the fact that he might not willingly want me to do this or might not have, more openly supported me, since he's a little reserved man. He's not someone who can express everything, but he has always been there for me when I needed him the most.
Right.
Yeah.
And to talk about that book in particular, there is a lot of instance where even the characters go around, traveling, or let's say hiking, to be more specific.
Right.
How do you see your traveling experiences coming into your books?
A lot of my traveling experiences have formed a part of my books, because those are the experiences which are different. And even when people read fiction, they don't want to read what's happening with them every day. So while the character has to be a reflection of them, the character can't be someone alien that they don't relate with or connect with.
Right.
His challenges have to be close enough to the readers. But his experiences need to be more empowered than readers' experiences for him to be able to escape into this make-believe world where he's the hero.
Yeah.
And for that, I think travel and these experiences that I've had play a very, very important role. Also for my readers, they play a very, very important role. And I think that is where they love these characters, because essentially at the core, they are a lot like them. They have the same struggles. They have the same lives. But when these characters break free and do things that my readers cannot do, they feel inspired enough to be like this character someday and to be able to do that. So while the characters are completely close to them, the experiences are alien. And that's the perfect mix why my stories are loved by my readers, is what I feel.
Right. And I think while traveling also, there are certain experiences that you just have because of the travel that you're doing. Why
Right.
don't you share an experience where you finally found it that you are being driven by a Pakistani driver?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting. I think you've read it somewhere. So yeah, once I was in Barcelona, and this happened because my friends had an event, a startup event that they had to attend. So they had everything paid for, like from the
Okay.
company, which was their expenses and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So I just had to buy plane tickets. That's all. I
Okay.
was just going on a free ride apart from that. So it
Yeah.
was a perfect moment for me to sort of go to Europe and explore. Like, you wouldn't get this chance again. Maybe some
Right.
years down the line, you would be married, having a more settled down life. But this was my chance to explore. So I was like, okay, I will go on this trip,
Yeah.
which I did. And when we landed in Barcelona, so our trip was from Prague to Barcelona. And then in Barcelona, we landed on the airport and we had already booked a cab. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of a pre-booked cab, and this driver started talking to us in Hindi. So we became really happy, and then we bonded over so many things, over food, over life of Indians in Europe, over racism, so many things. And eventually we realized that this guy was not really from India. We had mistaken him for being from India because he had a lot, his features were a lot like South Asians, like how we have, and he was speaking in Hindi. So we were like, yeah, ye to Hindustani hi hai.
Right.
But we realized later on that he was Pakistani, because there was this India Pakistan match that was happening on that day, and he suddenly started talking about Pakistani players, and that's where we realized that he's Pakistani. But there was a bigger realization as a writer that I had that day. While we are in India, we are engaged in such small fights, India, Pakistan, Hindu, Muslim, things like that. But when you look at it from a broader perspective, when you move to the West, when you move to countries like Europe, when you move to countries like the Americas, I know the Americas because a couple of friends who live there have told me about the same thing. There, the South Asians bond really well, because now it's not India versus Pakistan. Now it's Asia versus Europe. So now this small cluster has united. So all the Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans, Nepalis, Pakistanis, Indians, for that matter, they all live like a community there, because now it's no more Hindu Muslim, India Pakistan, India Bangladesh. It's Asia versus Europe. And I think these kind of realizations can only happen to you when you go out on the open road, when you realize that the world is such a big place, there are so many things that you don't know of yet. And I think I've always been this person who feels that there's no end to seeking knowledge or wisdom. This journey is infinite. Even at 100-year-old, I hope I'm able to, live until 100 years. If I do that, still the kind of experiences that I'll be able to gather wouldn't be, enough, or that knowledge wouldn't be enough to make me the most intelligent person on earth, because the process of gaining knowledge or stumbling upon newer things is infinite. This journey has no end, and you have to learn every day. You have to challenge yourself every day, and you have to sort of, push yourselves hard and change your values and beliefs sometime, because this is how life is. It's not stagnant, it's not constant, it's not the same set of values that will help you sail through entire life. So maybe at the age of 3, I might feel that maybe living in is a crime or something like that. Maybe at 18 I might want to do it, because now this is something which has become paramount to my existence. I have to do it. I don't have an option. And I will again change my belief at that time. So I think human beings always sort of shift their beliefs to suit their own purpose. and they
Right.
kind of try to justify it. And when others do the same, they become judgmental.
Right.
And this is the exact kind of person that I don't want to become. I don't want to be judgmental. I want to be this person who's in the school of life and who is learning always. And
Right.
then again, coming back to it, that travel helps me do the same, because not everything is in the books that you read. Not everything is there in the books that you read, especially in school. There's so many things that you learn through your experiences, and travel is again an enabler
Right.
to the fact that you can be experiencing a lot more things that you have till now, and you could be learning a lot more things.
Right.
So this one incident actually shifted or changed my view, so to say, because I never thought of it as Europe versus India. When I would sit in a match, it would always be India versus Pakistan, and it would
Right.
always be that India has to win. I
Right.
never thought that cumulatively we are winning a battle someplace else, somewhere else. And
Yeah.
that concept, however alien it was to me some years back, is now no more alien to me. And I credit travel to that. So I feel
Right.
that there's nothing like travel. There's nothing like going out, exploring, learning. There's nothing like having a personality that wants to learn more and change with time. You can't be constant.
Right.
And the last thing that I don't want to be is judgmental. And I think travel helps me do that.
Right.
Travel helps me not judge others.
Yeah.
Because right now, if someone is in a whale, you would just say that this person is a Muslim because he's wearing a burqa. But there are so many places around the world where you might not be a Muslim and you would still be taking a veil because it's something which is so unique to your own culture.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
so many Pahari women who take this whole veil and they wear those malas and all. So you can't just say that, you can't just label people because of their certain life choices that they are this or they are that. You become a lot more accepting.
Right.
You become a lot more human,
Right.
and you become a lot more yourself. So
Right.
for me, travel also serves the purpose of kind of, trying to understand more about my own self, not just about the world. So the
Right.
journey, however external it may sound, is also internal because it's changing you from within.
Right. And if I understand you correctly, and if I'd like to take one thing out of it, I think what I see is that your identity changes when you change geography. Your identity might also change when you change time period, for example. And
Yes,
to be able to
very
recognize,
true and very intelligent.
so there is one chance when we realize that not everybody fits a certain kind of a definition of how we
Right.
perceive people. Then there is other way when we are writing a storyline. There are certain stereotypes that we necessarily exploit just because we want to build that story up.
Right.
It could be about guys ogling over girls, or it could be about a shy girl who is suddenly bursting out on people because somebody commented on her. So how you as a writer are able to differentiate between the two and is still able to make the balance between the two?
Right. I think as a writer, it's very important to have good observation skills. So if only you're able to observe something well enough, you can point out these changes or these differences that people have in their personality. And like you pointed out very wittingly, that it also changes across geographies and it also changes across timeline. So the person that I was as a 3-year-old is definitely not the person that I am as 30-year-old and then as 90-year-old. Not just
Right.
physically, also
Right.
mentally. There's this whole change in your mindset happening all through your journey. You're not the same person.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I pick up these nuances from real-time characters, from real-time people. So for example, I was once in Kashmir
Mhm.
and there was a waiter and he was serving us and he was like really kind, really nice, really happy. So I told him that, you are such a nice waiter. You could be waiting tables anywhere across the world. You know English, you are decent, stuff like that. Why are you in this small place where the tourism is also less? You could be making a lot more money if you move out.
Yeah.
And he pointed out that he has worked in Mumbai for some time and then he faced a lot of racial abuse because coming from the north, he couldn't be speaking in Marathi and there were so many other things. So he was telling me about an incident where he was in a local train and the Mumbai police beat him up because he did not have a ticket. At the same time, there was another Marathi guy who did not have a ticket, but then they did not beat him up because he was a Marathi. And that's
Okay.
the kind of casual communism that happens
Right.
even in India today.
Right.
So I'm just bringing out this example not to blame anyone, but just to sort of bring it to your notice that so many people are going through so many different challenges that might be totally alien to us because we haven't faced it, right?
Yeah.
We are more
Yeah.
privileged. We live in tier 1 cities. We come from families that have supported our education. So we know the world a lot better than these people.
Right.
They don't know how to fight for themselves because they just don't know what's right and what's wrong. They have
Yeah.
no idea about what laws of the land are.
Right.
And they have to run away from situations like this. So this guy ran away from Mumbai and he came back to Kashmir and he started working in the hotel that he was employed in. And now this guy is happy making less money, but he doesn't want to risk his life and go out again.
Right.
And he's happy there.
Right.
So just trying to bring out this example to tell you that observing people around me, talking to them, trying to bring out that what their journey has been and what they have gone through in the past sort of helps me build in building characters, because I think the kind of stories or the reality in stories that you can get from speaking to people, or the nuances that you can build in your narrative, is something that you cannot do sitting in a room, sipping a coffee and thinking, you will get to know a character. You have to talk to a character to know a character. There's no other way.
Right. Right. I think that's like jumping into water and then learning to swim instead of
Yes.
going over the books and just reading about it.
Yes.
You have a poignant hashtag which is make a move.
Yes.
Why is that make a move so important to you? Just 3 words.
I loved it that you noticed it. Very less people, I mean, obviously people who've read my books do notice it, but otherwise it's still not that popular. But I want to make it popular so I'll tell you why and how this thing came into the picture. When I wrote my first book, I wanted to sign books. I was really fancied by the ideas that a lot of novelists that I used to look up to would sign books for their readers. But when I Googled it, I realized that they don't just sign the books, they also write something, they write a message or anything.
Yeah.
Now, since I had to sign so many books, I couldn't be going with a message which is maybe a 2-liner or a 3-liner, because then it takes too much of your time.
Yeah.
It has to be short, it has to be simple, but it has to hit you hard.
Right.
And it has to hit you at a place where the whole purpose of my life, comes into picture. So I am an author or a storyteller who wants to tell life-changing stories. Yeah. And when I want to tell life-changing stories, after reading my story, I want you to do something. I just don't want you to sit. I want you to do something. Right. So what do I want you to do? I want you to make a move. That's where the whole slogan came in. And make a move has 2 meanings. If you look at make a move as a line, and I'm talking from the nuances of language, make a move means move from where you are. That's the literal meaning. That move from where you are. Do something. Right. And it means literally walking. So make a move would be if you're sitting here, make a move. You move from here to here, but then you make a move.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, make a move means to change your situation in life, to change states of existence in life. If you're here, then you want to be here. Make a move. Otherwise, it's not possible.
Yeah.
So I can't be living the same life every day and expecting that something new happens to me. If I really want that to happen, I will have to make a move, because change is, I would say, the predecessor to every big thing in life. Without change, any big thing cannot happen. And for that to happen, change has to come in.
Right.
And change comes in only when you make a move, because you're sitting at one place, you won't be seeing change.
Right. Right.
So move physically, which means travel, in my case, and move metaphorically, which means elevate the stage of your mind, because where you are, if you want to be there forever, then you can't be expecting a different result. For you to expect a different result, you have to move physically and mentally. And that's what the slogan for me, make a move, stands for. And now 3 years after I first made this slogan, when I was signing the first print run of my book On the Open Road, it has become something which is so synonymous to my existence, or Stuti Changle's existence, and that's that I sign every book with the slogan "Make a Move," and now I want people to do it, because that is what my stories are supposed to do in your life. They're supposed to make you move, and they are life changing, and they should be that.
Right. I think it's also wonderful in the sense that it's too easy to remember as well. So if you can remember it, you can remind yourself of it too quickly as well, unless it becomes too difficult. So yeah,
Yes.
what Stuti as an author has in her plans next? Is she writing another book? Is she working on a show, or is she writing advertisements? What's coming next?
Okay, so Sayam, I'm already working on my next book. It's almost 80-90% done. Like, I would say the first draft is done, because I am still going through the second draft and doing it. But in terms of releasing, of course, it's not coming anytime before, I would say, the second half of next year, that is 2021,
Mm-hmm.
because You Only Live Once right now is doing well, and we want the sales to kind of peak. Only
Right.
then we would be launching my next book. So it'll come next year, but I'm almost done with it. So I think in the coming times, once in the December I'm done with the third script, there would be a lag of maybe 6 or 7 months before the book comes into the market,
Yeah.
editing, proofreading, stuff like that happens,
Mhm.
and the final thing is out. I think I really want to bring this character Rami from my books to life. I want to be Rami maybe on social media, and I would be bringing out a lot more blogs, a lot more content from Rami's perspective, because this is one character people love. This is
Yeah.
something that I had planned back in 2019 as well, but it couldn't sort of happen because I got busy with a TV show, and then I was giving my 100% there. I did
Yeah.
not want it to be at two places, but
Yeah.
I think given the whole COVID situation, not a lot of speaking engagements, not a lot of workshops, not a lot of other things are happening.
Yeah.
So I think this is the time after I finish the book that I can be working again on the narrative of Rami and bring it more alive through social media, through blogs, through website.
Right. And I think bringing Remy to life would be one thing a lot of us would be looking forward to. Uh, so before
Yes.
we will close, we will have one game with Nishtha, and she'll be joining in soon here.
So, hello, Stuti.
Hi, Nishta.
So, I'll be taking the rapid fire round with you, and there's only one rule that the you have to say the first thought which comes in your mind after listening to the question.
Okay, now this I feel is the challenging part of the entire podcast.
No, this is going to be really fun because we have found out so many questions which would be fun by your side as well, and your readers would be very excited to hear those answers.
Okay, just God, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Cool,
So,
let's start. I'm already nervous and excited.
yeah, so the first question is stupidest dare ever given to you by your friends?
To dance and say Om Namah Shivaya.
I think every one of us have same kind of friends.
I think so.
Okay, so one idea that changed your life.
To become a writer.
That one, yeah. Okay, favorite travel destination, as we have read that you are a travel enthusiast.
I don't know. There's so many places. India. I mean, anywhere in India. I love India.
India is a lovable country. So, favorite beverage of yours?
Coffee.
The Starbucks thing, we were aware of it.
I knew it was gonna come back. It's gonna haunt me forever.
No, that was a really good experience, by the way.
Yes, in a good way.
Yeah. What does Tuti prefer, fast food or homemade food?
Homemade food. Dal chawal, my favorite.
Yeah. First question you will ask to your favorite author whenever you'll get to meet or if you meet him or her till now.
How do you manage to get such wonderful ideas? That's all.
Yeah. I think this question all the readers must be very excited to know about. Any celebrity crush?
No one right now.
Okay. Fave quote of all time till now.
Favorite quote of all time.
Yeah.
The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. These are lines from a poem by Robert Frost. I think everything that I've done in my life, now that I'm matured, I feel that had some role to play. Even if I dated the stupidest guy, it has helped me realize something about myself. So even failures help you learn so many things, and I wouldn't be where I am without that. So I think there are no regrets. Absolutely everything that happened was very necessary for me to become me right now.
Oh, so you have a lot of experiences, it says.
Yes. Good and bad.
Yeah. Okay, first book you remember reading.
Peter Pan.
And you really must have liked it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Your mentor or inspiration.
My husband, Kushal.
Okay. A person you think changed our India through their work.
Mother Teresa.
One trait you feel every human being must possess.
You should be kind.
I was expecting that answer because that's like everyone should have that. One book you like reading over and over again, other than your own creations.
Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk.
I haven't read it, but now I'll surely do that.
You should watch the movie. Brad Pitt. It's a movie that stars Brad Pitt. I've seen that movie over 20 times.
Oh. Okay, so the last question. Something you want to do at least once in your life, as we all know you only live once.
Okay, so I want to jump from the plane. That's the only thing I think I would be most scared of. Most of the things I've done, I don't fear water at all. So I've done scuba diving, everything. But height is something which is my biggest fear. So if I'm able to do this, I think I will overcome a lot of stress in my life because I'm always scared when I'm at a height.
Okay, so we are done with all the questions here, and thank you because I think you have answered them with utter honesty.
Thank you so much. I think all the questions were good and I sort of enjoyed. I'm sorry your rapid fire could not be very rapid because there were lags, but I just wanted to give the most honest answer. That's all.
And I felt your answers were really, really genuine, so I enjoyed your answers.
Thank you.
So thank you, Stuti, for answering all the questions.
You're welcome.
So that was a very interesting round of rapid fire where, to our understanding, Stuti was very honest, and then the answers that she gave definitely gave us a peek into her mindset. Before we close, we will have Stuti flaunt one of her talents, which is that she's a very beautiful singer. So we'll request Stuti to give a singing melodious performance for 5 minutes. The podcast is all yours.
I'll do that, and I think I'll just not bore you because my answers were already long enough. So I'll just sing a couple of lines.
I think that works, though the answers weren't boring at all.
Yeah.
Okay. All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up to say goodbye. But the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. The taxi's waiting, it's blowing his horn. Already I'm so lonesome I could die. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you so much, Stuti, for that lovely performance. And while concluding, I would definitely want to say that probably just by reading your books, I would have not known about Stuti, and you have been very honest, very upfront about your experiences, how you grew up as a person. I think there are a lot of learnings that every one of us can take from here. One of the most poignant of those would be for me is that probably you are reserved. Probably you thought that you're not good enough. Probably there is a peer pressure that can drown you down. But then there could also be people in your life. If you just hold on to them for some time, you'll come out strong enough. With this,
Yes.
we'll go close the podcast. In the description, go out on Amazon, buy these books. We'll put out the links. And thank you so much, Stuti, for spending your valuable time with us. We enjoyed it. I hope you had a great time too.
Thank you, Sanyam and Nishta. The feeling is mutual. I think it was one of those podcasts that allowed me to dive a lot more into my personal life and bring out certain nuances that I have not done before in any other interview or podcast. And it sort of made me reflect back on my journey. And I feel so much more happy and excited right now because I could revisit my past and see that how long I've come. So thank you so much for making me go through that beautiful journey once again. And thank you for having me here. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I wish all the best to you guys with your podcast. Guys, keep listening to them. They're amazing. And this whole brother sister duo are like doing amazing things. So just support them, make them reach where they want to.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for
so much.
marketing for us as well. And thank you so much, listeners. We'll come up with another episode in some time. See you. Bye bye.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.